everybody. Welcome back to the Boss Rush Spotlight podcast, the developer and creator interview series by Boss Rush. I'm your host, Stephanie Klimov. It's been a while. And today I have video game composer and producer, Adam, aka Crashtroid. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic now that I can finally get talking to you. Some behind the scenes for everyone. That's why it's kind of been a while since we haven't put up a spotlight. Had some Zencastr problems, but it's okay. We like to stay positive and optimistic because we're here now and it's all in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't you do a quick high-level introduction to yourself for those that are new to your work?
Sure. My name's Adam. I go online by Crashtroid. That's like been my music name forever. I've been writing music for video games as like a hobby for as long as I've been doing music, which I think is like middle school. But I've started to do it professionally now as of the last 2-3 years. So now I'm in the industry working on games and having the time of my life. It's been great. You can find a lot of my work on places like Newgrounds and Bandcamp and stuff like that, working on getting more streaming services solidified because I know people love their little like workout playlists and stuff. And a lot of the titles that I've worked on ended up being released to Steam. It includes things like Hybrid Animals back in like 2014 or something like that. There's Foul Damage, which came out recently, a little puzzle platformer. And probably the biggest project I'm known for is Peglin, a little roguelike RPG game.
Yep, and I can stand by that. I played Peglin on my way to PAX West, and I absolutely adore that game. And one of the first things that, kind of hooked me was the music. So when I just happened to run into you at PAX or communicated with you via email too, I believe it was just kind of a great coincidence. So we got to chat a bit. So yes, you have various projects: Hybrid Animals, Ace in Space, Foul Damage, and Peglin. You were last seen PAX West. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, I always like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker called the Gauntlet, just random gaming and non-gaming related questions. And because I'm a fan of caffeination, which I don't have any by my side, I really need my Red Bull. What's your ideal form of caffeination? Do you, when you're working hard and you need to stay awake a couple extra hours, do you consume coffee, tea, energy drinks?
I'm going to be real with you. Caffeine does not work for me, actually. I have ADHD, so I take some medication for that when I need to focus, right? It's something I can take like all at once on one day. I'm fine. Gets scary if you consume caffeine at the same time. Those two things are not supposed to mix. I'm not willing to find out what happens. I have tried energy drinks a couple times. They've done nothing for me but like send me to Napville. I don't know why. I drink a mango monster. I'm just out on the couch 15 minutes.
Sometimes they have that paroxysmal effect, depending on the chemical makeup in our brains. So that's like, well, I mean, for me, I have a bit of a caffeine addiction. So caffeine addiction, I also caffeine, but I need to work on that. So speaking of, being productive, when do you tend to be most productive? Are you the type that feels that you're better able to work in the morning, late at night, or are you that kind of person that just whenever throughout the day that strikes you?
It's definitely like when it strikes me, but that's more often in like late afternoon, nighttime, which I hate because I want to be awake when all my coworkers are awake and when like I can collaborate with people, but instinctively my body is like, all right, 3 a.m. you're writing a bass line, go. And I just night owl. Don't want to be night owl, but that's just how it is,
Yeah, sometimes our brain, our thoughts, they just turn on and start running on that hamster wheel, even though we kind of don't want it to. I've been there. For you, what is your what do you think? You can either pick one or the other. What's the most underrated or overrated game?
Like out of everything ever. I think,
or one of the. So maybe like that takes the pressure off a little bit.
Because like I like a lot of things that are reasonably popular. I think one of the most underrated games that I've ever played has got to be Grapple Dog. It's a very like GBA kind of looking era game, and it's a relatively simple 2D platformer. But like when looking at it with like Pizza Tower and Anton Blast and Foul Damage and all these other like 2D platformers that I've completely fallen in love with, Grapple Dog seems to not get as much attention when it totally deserves to through its like combination of fantastic visuals. The music is phenomenal. Like it's way top tier. And just the nature of like momentum based grapple hook stuff. That's the thing that you can put in a game and I'll buy 4 copies every time. Momentum based grapple hooks.
Grapple Dog?
Grapple Dog, and then now they've got a sequel, Grapple Dog's Cosmic Canines. They're both great, and they're both like reasonably short games. So like I feel great recommending them to people when I'm like, yeah, you could pick this up, finish it in a couple days, and just be like, I loved it. I'm gonna move on now. You know?
Oh, that's awesome! I'm glad you mentioned something because I'll be honest, I haven't heard of it, so I definitely will keep an eye on it and pick it up. This is going to be one of my many tangents. Sorry, my new kitten is following me like a shadow. I named her Midna after the Twilight Princess. Usually, I name my pets after medications because I'm a pharmacist by day, but this one, her name is Midna. Maybe she'll make an appearance.
I hope so.
You mentioned Anton Blast and Foul Damage because I got to experience both at PAX West, and I know on the other end of the spectrum, same genre, but indie versus AAA. Like we have Astrobot. That's not a 2D platformer, but it's a platformer. I've noticed kind of every year or a couple years, there's usually a genre that either makes a comeback or gets hot again. Like we had the year of Elden Ring where those Souls-like games, I don't know, they've always been there. But you know what I'm saying? So do you feel like platformers are making a massive comeback?
I don't necessarily know if it's like a massive comeback. I'm not necessarily informed on everything as well as I should be, considering that like platforming was the genre that like put me into games. But I do feel like there's just a lot of really high quality ones coming out right now, right? No bias here. But Foul Damage, I absolutely fell in love with that when May first gave me a copy to the game before I got to write any music for it. Just because, like, it's a decent length and it has just enough mechanics that like it keeps you interested and engaged. And as soon as you start to get slightly bored of one idea, you move right on to the next. Hello, Midnight. Okay, good. I'm glad she made it. And then I started to realize that like that's the thing that keeps me coming back to like the 2D platformers right now. With Pizza Tower, with Anton Blast, with Foul Damage, and with Grapple Dogs, they all have the understanding of like, I'm going to give you this new toy to play with, and as soon as you're about to get bored, we're moving to a new thing, right? And that keeps the shorter run times from like anywhere like the I don't know, if you really speed run hard, you could hit like 4 hours in most of these games, and then like, maybe to 8 hours if you're dying a couple times per stage. Those are still satisfying all the way through. And I don't know if they're necessarily making a comeback in terms of like volume. I don't know how many people are making 2D platformers, selling them, having success in that. But like the ones that I have gotten to play lately, which there are more than there have been in the last decade, they've all been fantastic, and I'm very happy that that's like coming back. I missed it dearly.
Yeah, because I've only been really tuned into the industry since about 2020, so I can't say I've been a insider for decades. Even though who knows, in a blink of an eye, 2020 will be decades from now. But I remember the loving mascot platformers of the early, I'm like trying to figure out like the console generations, but they were decades ago. And I just don't recall hearing a lot of people gush over any particular platformers in the last few years until recently, like you said, with Pizza Tower and Anton Blast and stuff. So it kind of rings a little bit of the nostalgia bone for me. So that's why I'm excited about it.
I really like that too. I think one of the things that really helps them stand out amongst other games right now is their like sense of style. Grapple Dogs has a very coherent aesthetic. Anton Blast is just as much screen shake and like particles on screen as you could possibly handle. Pizza Tower has that like whole MS Paint thing going on, and Foul Damage has this like serene and calm, almost contemplative nature. And all 4 of them really know what they want to be at just about every moment of their runtime. Whereas like in the I don't know, early 2000s, I guess it was like GameCube era, I noticed a lot of the games that I remember playing, like Crash Bandicoot, like Wrath of Cortex and Jack and Dexter and stuff like that. I only got to like touch those a little bit, but they started to feel like they drifted away from like core platforming identity and started to like do other things. And then eventually mascot platformers probably wanted to be everything games, and then right, all of a sudden they don't hit a niche anymore, and then people kind of fall out of love, right? They find the next
Exactly.
thing. So.
They're kind of like, okay, it's like nothing to write home about.
Yeah.
Excellent.
This is all, by the way, consumer thoughts. I have no insight on this as like a developer of any kind, because in early 2000s, I was in like elementary school. So this is all just like my thoughts as a consumer.
Right.
I feel like I should lay that out.
Yes, we're two fans. We're just talking about our love for video games. Yeah, because I was thinking like late N64 into GameCube and then PS2, and I'm like, I was in middle school, so yeah, I too, less experienced gamer back then. Anyway, speaking of Nintendo, who, in your humblest of opinions, is the superior Mario brother, Mario or Luigi? I get into.
I'm sorry, that's not even. After like appearing in early Paper Mario games and like the Mario and Luigi like Superstar Saga and then onwards, right? Bowser's Inside Story, Dream Team. Like after all of that characterization to Luigi, there's absolutely no way that you could put Mario in front of me and be like, yes, he's interesting and complex. When like Luigi has deep-seated insecurities and like this love for his brother that constantly manifests in the way that he like acts. And it's just like, okay, yeah, he got here first. Mario was here first, but does that make it more interesting? Not at all. No way. That's not even a competition.
I love it. When this recording's done and it's processed, I'm going to replay this for my son, because we get into this debate daily. He's Team Mario, I'm Team Luigi. And you know what? I'm like, you know what? You're 9. It's all right. You'll learn. You'll learn someday. So
I mean, like everybody has the moment where they're like, it's Mario Brothers. I'm going to be Mario in Mario Kart. But then, you grow up and you're like, Petey Piranha, Funky Kong, I'm gonna diversify a bit.
Exactly. All right. How about faming gaming genre? So you, as a consumer, whenever you do have the spare time to play, is there a particular genre you gravitate to?
Oh, absolutely. Platformers as a whole have always been really big for me, because like my starting games were Crash Bandicoot 2, Donkey Kong Country, and those have always been around, but like I will always go back to the older ones that hold like certain aesthetics or like certain soundtrack memories or whatever. But now I'm also finding stuff that like competes directly with that. Like I put Anton Blast's soundtrack on like the same tier as like pretty much any Crash Bandicoot soundtrack I've ever heard, which is like huge. Like that's massive. But like Tony has absolutely outdone himself.
Yes.
Astronomical soundtrack. It's wild. So there's platformers, both 2D and 3D. I'm a huge fan of like movement shooters, like Doom, Dusk. I've been trying to play Quake lately. I haven't had a lot of time for that, but like just anything that's about like move and shoot, especially stuff with a lot of verticality. Games like Boomerang X blow my mind. I love that game. Boomerang X. Go play Boomerang X.
Okay.
Great. So yeah, platformers, movement shooters. Recently, I've been into fighting games, but I think that's only because like Street Fighter has given me the ability to kind of inject myself into the competitive sphere with modern controls, right? Not having to worry about execution barriers means I can learn more of the technical stuff, be worried more about like mind games and setups and stuff. So I can participate at a competent level now without having to learn how to double SPD with Zangief. Like you're not going to get me to do that. So fighting games have been of a real interest lately. And I guess like I haven't seen many other like genres that kind of like filled the same niche as these games, but like the format of Yakuza games and the format of Monster Hunter games have been really appealing lately. And there's not really any other games in those genres that I feel like kind of stand out to me at this moment. So, if anyone else wants to take a crack at it and make something cool, do it. But yeah, those two franchises, whatever genres that they fit exactly, kind of feel like the biggest ones, Those is
Yeah,
what I
you're
gravitate
right. I
towards.
feel like when you name those franchises, I feel like they stand on pillars of their own. Now, granted, this is coming from someone that actually hasn't really played much of either of them, just because not just because
Mm,
of the lack of interest. Again, like I came in playing more at certain times with previous histories, like with Nintendo or whatever. I've played Monster Hunter Rise with some friends, and that ended up being
I
a lot
love
of
that one.
fun. Yes, and then that Wilds will be coming out, and I know they
Mm,
made an appearance at West. So many people are excited for that. I think Capcom is on fire. I mean, just generally speaking, but also with Monster Hunter. So I'm really looking forward to Wilds, and then Yakuza. I know the spinoff with the pirate ones coming out, and I think that's
yeah.
awesome. Play that so badly.
I'm
Oh,
really stoked about that one. I think just getting anything else from that studio from RGG is just a blessing every single time. I really love them and everything that they've put out so far.
absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. Those are all
Yeah.
excellent choices. I mean, not that there's ever a wrong choice, right? Because that's why we have many of them. Everybody has different tastes, and I feel like sometimes tastes can even change. I know mine have. So,
Oh, absolutely.
all right, rounding out the gauntlet is something kind of more your specialty. So, what is your favorite music medium? And what made me think of that question is I know vinyls had made a comeback, quote unquote. Like yeah, young kids are buying these like overly priced, fancy record players. Um,
Yeah.
I even see CDs being sold. I'm like, and then even cassettes. Like I'm even seeing some
Hmm.
cassettes. And at first, I bought some cassettes at West for some game soundtracks because I love the art. I love I initially grew up with cassettes, but then when I looked up purchasing cassettes, they've all jumped up in price because it's all retro. So,
Yep.
what's your favorite
That
music
thing
medium
30 years ago is all of a
or
sudden way more
streaming?
expensive. I
Yeah.
think it's really hard for me to say that I have any nostalgia for like any kind of physical music medium because when I was a kid, like I don't even think I was really a musician as a kid. Like that didn't
Mm-hmm.
occur to me as like my thing. I just really liked music, but uh I never adhered to any of those physical mediums, right? I didn't purchase CDs because none of the bands that I liked were making music that went on CDs
Oh,
because they were all
gotcha.
working on video games and then I didn't have access to those CDs. Right? Like I'm thinking like, oh, I wanted to listen to Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 soundtrack and sometimes 3. I don't have access to that CD as a kid or a cassette about that. And if I want to go get that now, I think the last price I saw for a Donkey Kong Country 2 CD was $1,200. If that was converted from yen, but like that was a used CD of DKC2.
Oh my gosh.
$1,200 was like, wow, that I don't even know what to say about that. Like, I don't know how many burgers I could have bought for that. And then I'm thinking, like, with cassettes and other things like that, they just, yeah, none of the music that was important to me in my childhood adheres to that. So, really, like, the music medium that I've been using the most lately, and like, I guess I care the most about right now, is like this self streaming service kind of thing where, like, I've been buying a lot of game soundtracks from other indie devs and stuff, making my own collections, making sure they're all pretty. They have their metadata, their album art, everything's organized. And then I kind of like host my own server where I can like stream them to my phone on my own time, right?
Oh,
Uh,
that's cool.
it's a really neat idea of like just being able to self-host servers with content that you like, and that's nice for me because like the Soul Blade soundtrack didn't get dropped on Spotify until like 2 days ago, and that game's from like 97, 96.
Hmm.
Where was it the whole time? I don't know, but if I can get a hold of digital files, I can just stream them myself, and I think that's really really cool, right?
That's brilliant, actually. I didn't even think about that. And now that you mention it, you're right. I feel that at least when it comes to video game soundtracks, we're kind of a little bit behind, right? Because
Very fine, yeah.
mainstream music that was all readily available on cassettes, vinyl, CD,
Hmm.
maybe movie soundtracks a little bit, but video game soundtracks. I mean, we're still lucky if they're dropping now, like you said. The fact that Nintendo finally created another app, but and they're
And
slowly
then
dropping.
don't credit any of their musicians. Ugh, don't get me
I
on
know it's
that.
like, come on, Nintendo. But I'm like, all right, well, I guess it's a start. I don't know, but it just
It's a
dawned
start.
on me. I'm like, you're right. We're very late on that. when it
Yeah.
comes to that industry. So that's unfortunate because I feel like some of the many of the music found in various games and franchises are at least as good as, if not better than, other like movie, TV show music. Like music is music.
Right. It's whatever you feel like gives you the most emotion out of the whole thing, right? Art is made to make you feel things most often or express a feeling. And if that somehow arises out of a song that has a melodically complex lead that completely abstains from having vocals because it was written for a video game and I don't know, stuff on the SNES didn't generally have vocals. If that's where you experience emotion, that's where you should get it. And that's fine. It just wasn't widely considered at the time to be like something that people would want to derive emotion from. And as frustrating as it is in modern day to like have to look back and find all of that stuff from like, fan collections, contributions, or preservations or whatever, I'm not going to stop doing it. Right? I'm not just going to be like, okay, I think I'll go Taylor Swift. I'll buy that album. I'm going to fall mainstream. Like, if you like Taylor Swift, go crazy. But that one's not my thing. That's my sister's thing. So I'm going to go get Donkey Kong Country 1 on the Super Nintendo, and I'm going to listen to that. And you're going to leave me be about it. Not this is hypothetical. I'm not you, but like,
I get it. Like just a quick anecdote, like after, because right now I'm working 2 jobs. Thankfully, I'm going to be back to 1 soon. And the other job, like I don't get out of work till 1, and I'm exhausted. And the kind of music they play at the job is like club music and loud, like just terrible music. So when I drive home, I put on YouTube and I look up Wind Waker staff credits, and I can't play that on repeat because it just puts me back in that like calm sense, slightly joyous but calm. And then by the time I get home, like, okay, I'm wound down a little bit.
A quick, not to like reverse this on you, but like a quick question. Do you ever feel like sometimes when something's happening in your life, like your brain will make a soundtrack out of something you've already heard to like accentuate what's going on? Or is that just a me thing?
No, yes. No, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's happened to me.
Okay.
So you're not the only one. No, this is good. Back and forth. You got questions, throw them my way too. So it's good to connect that way. It's funny how our brain works, but I do feel like music, just generally speaking, is something that really speaks to us as a species more than what meets the eye. I mean, maybe some people
absolutely.
don't, see that, but I certainly do. Great. Thank you. We're just going to, we're already having a great conversation. I fairly wouldn't even call it a gauntlet anymore, but just to kind of dial it back a little bit. So it's been a while since I've seen you. Now that everything's over, how was your experience at PAX West? If you are allowed to, what have you been working on since your return from the convention?
PAX West is always phenomenal because it's right across the water for me. And it means that like everybody I see there is, local, they're friends, they're, people I trust and value. And over the course of like 4 years now being at PAX West, I don't know. I just feel like some of the best friends I've ever made are there at the convention. Sometimes it's the only place I see them. Sometimes I get to go to Seattle or Vancouver and see them there. But like, they're really close with me now. I really appreciate them, and being at PAX West, beyond like the, walking up all the stairs to get to the show floors and how loud it is and how dark it is in there. Nothing ever comes close to like spending that time with those people after the show, having dinner, going to parties, just like being around them. Right. Especially because like they're all other developers, right? They're people who care about the same art form as me and want to push it forward and want to make cool things. And like, I have lots of friends outside of game development, but a lot of them are gamers, right? They're people who also care about the art form. They just don't make it, right? Yeah. And it's nice to have friends in all these spaces. And I'm glad that like that same thing that I care about carries over between those two groups, right? It's just really nice. In terms of what's been like going on for work since then, since PAX, that was in September. So I think right away I started working on my first film scoring piece, which was a lot of fun because it was like a very video gamey like centric kind of animation. Right? It was it was a bank heist kind of I almost want to say like Yakuza-ish type like combat sequence, because like a lot of the animations in there remind me of like heat actions and other like segmented combat choreography from Yakuza. But ultimately it's Joel's own work, and like he's done a really fantastic job at like building this really, really amazing like fight choreography that shows up 3 or 4 times in a 7-minute animation. Like we get a lot of really cool combat, and that means I got to write all sorts of different music for those things, right? Boss themes are like, that's my jam. That's my favorite thing to do.
Boss themes,
like,
nice.
Crank intensity way up high, you know, bring as much emotion as you can. And a lot of the time it's also like draw together all the other themes of the game, or the animation in this case. So with this animation called Baptism by Fire, right? It's the story of this guy named Frank who's, I guess, a criminal. He's been a long time criminal, and he's like committed to one more job just to grab enough money for some purpose that I can't personally remember. But he's far too upstanding, and he ends up putting himself into a dangerous situation while trying to do the right thing during a bank heist, which also conflicts with part of his team. So there's a lot of like betrayal and a lot of tension between him and his teammates. So I got to write a lot of music that pertained to just like fun combat, like showing off, doing cool flip kicks, you know, breaking people's guns in half, things like that. But then also some more like stringent combat sequences where he feels stressed and concerned. And, you know, I got to do the Peglin boss theme kind of thing where I pick 2 instruments and they start to like push against each other in like the main stage. Oh, that's always so much fun. And I'm not going to spoil the ending because you're going to go watch it yourself. Probably late February, early March is when we're looking at having like the full finished cut released. So
Okay.
Yeah, if you're watching this right now, you're gonna watch that animation. I'm not telling you what happens.
Perfect. Yeah, and then, you know, as we get closer to it, if you want to just a side note, like behind the scenes, like let me know. Happy to promote it, write an article about it, and talk it, and shout it from the
Appreciate
rooftops.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
For other stuff like game stuff, it's been very Peglin focused. We have an update coming out eventually for Act 4.
Yes.
Act 4 is going to be way smaller than the rest of the acts. It's going to be very quick. But we wanted to kind of give you like another boss that would be challenging enough for people who already know how to break the game, right? I know there's a Slay the Spire comparison to be made, but I haven't played all the way through Slay the Spire yet, actually. So my reference point is like the Voidling from Risk of Rain 2, where it's absolutely unfair and not in your favor at all. But that's because people have already figured out in a roguelike game how to make builds that are ridiculously overpowered for any of the rest of the content in the game. So this boss should be able to challenge some of those players, which I think, personally, I think that's a great idea. I always want something further to test the build, right? What limits could I possibly break here? And yeah, I don't want to tell you anything about the boss yet. There's no spoilers on what the music is going to be like, but I think this one's going to give me some space to get weirder with Peglin, and that's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Oh, that's so exciting. Oh my gosh. I can't wait. I really can't wait. That's awesome.
I mean, I don't exactly know when it's going to come out because we've been doing other like bug fixes and balance patches stuff lately, but it's on the way. So
yeah. Well, same thing applies. Like once you have more information, I mean, I'm sure I can also reach out to the PR company too, but and you know, was it Red Nexus Games?
Oh, that's just the developers. That's just us.
No, and also, but I meant like also I can reach out to Red Nexus Games. But like if you happen to know, just let me know. And again,
I definitely know. Yeah, I just can't talk about everything.
I meant when we are able to. Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yay. Well, actually, I'll skip one of the questions because you mentioned Peglin. So what was inspiration for the music behind Peglin? I know that's a broad question, but we'll start at the top.
Crash Bandicoot. Easy. One of the things that happened at the very beginning was like Dylan, when he asked for the soundtrack, it was to replace or I guess patch up some like blank spots of a pre-existing soundtrack. And I had offered him like, why don't I just start from the ground up here, right? And of course, Dylan's like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And he gave me a bunch of references for stuff that he would have loved to see based on RPGs that he really liked, like Legend of Dragoon and stuff. And I listened to them all, and I really do like them. But then I like looked at the tool set that I have available, and I'm like, can I emulate that kind of like PlayStation 1 early sound? Like, no. Do I know how? No. So I'm just gonna have to do my own thing. And I started to build up using like stock instruments in Contact, which is a pretty industry standard set of like virtual instruments. And then a couple of my favorite synth plugins as well. And like the combination of all of those kind of made Peglin sound as it is. Its melodies and like the way that all the music is structured is specifically just like me and my platformer fixation with Donkey Kong Country and Crash Bandicoot, and like really loving how different instruments take center stage, and they, kind of take turns as if they were performers putting on solos and stuff. And just having like complex enough lines that you don't feel like there's any lyrics or anything missing, right? When you listen to the marimba, it's always kind of like moving in a way that feels like somebody could have sang that line or vocalized that line. And I feel like that draws the attention enough that like we can focus on this without lyrics. Not like Peglin was ever going to have lyrics in the first place, but like, in comparison to more standard music, right? That's kind of like the writing ideology is I have to write everything complex enough that you can listen to it and be interested to where it goes next. I don't just want it to fade into the background.
Right. And this is coming from someone that's, not an expert in music. I love music, but not an expert. So I don't know how it works behind the scenes, but yeah, I could imagine it would be a challenge, but a good challenge to strike the balance between the music in a video game to be present enough where it'll move the player, it'll greatly impact their emotions, but not be so overbearing that it's distracting from gameplay.
Yeah, that was actually a lesson that I very quickly learned just by like watching a short clip about Doom Eternal when it was being made. Mick Gordon was talking about like, I was writing this song and I was like, 264 BPM. And then when we played it over a gameplay demo, nobody could focus at all because it was just too much, right? And initially I thought, there's no way it could be too much, right? It's Doom, right? It goes crazy. And then I heard the clip and I was like, oh, whoa, okay, that was too much. And immediately my perspective kind of shifted from like make the most complex and like layered music that I possibly can to impress people to, okay, maybe less is more sometimes, right? With Peglin, at the time when I was writing all the music for it, this is a recent revelation, actually. The actual mechanics of Peglin, where you throw the ball into the board and it bounces off of all the pegs and stuff, sonically it's not super involved, right? There's sounds and cues for everything that happens, like collecting a coin, bouncing off of something, throwing the orb, but there's not too many layered sound effects at once. So writing the music to be more complex and more audibly interesting to follow worked for that project. I'm now writing for a different project called Deathland Drifters. It's a roguelike game. Surprise, new reveal. Deathland Drifters is like a roguelike game where multiple people control a singular vehicle in a kind of Risk of Rain style like roguelike environment. And I'm noticing like just the amount of things going on screen. Bullets are flying, enemies are moving, boat is moving, shields are being deployed. There's more sound effects happening. And the thing that I don't want to do is overbear somebody's eardrums while they're trying to hear all of the other actions that are currently going on. So my writing for that one has taken a different style. And only now that I'm working on a project that's requiring me to consider that, is that really occurring to me, right? I'm learning just as much as anybody else at this point, right? Every project I work on, something new happens. So
just keep things interesting. Yeah, it's never like monotonous, or at least from project to project.
Not even close, except for when people ask for Persona 2 and they're like, can you do Persona? And I'm like, no, I can't write jazz. They're like, no, I didn't ask for jazz, I asked for Persona. And I'm like, don't talk to me. I can't do this.
So I'm maybe this will vary from project to project, but how long does it usually take for you to come up with music for a game? And percentage wise, like how much time is spent on your planning and writing versus actual creation?
I don't plan very much at all, right? I don't have a notebook where I sketch ideas in. I don't have like a document of like all of these ideas, and I have relatively little theory knowledge compared to a lot of other people because I did 3 years of middle school band and then stopped. So all the theory knowledge I have generally pertains to the trumpet. Everything else is just feeling it out. So when it comes to how long a project takes, it varies tremendously because sometimes the project plays into the strengths that I'm already, I think, good at. And I can just write them something that fits the style that I have written for my last project or whatever. Like Peglin, as soon as I had written the first song and I was given the go-ahead to keep going, that was, I don't want to say a piece of cake, but like I felt super confident in being able to deliver something that feels right for that world, right? As soon as I realized it lines up with what Dylan had asked for, and he was like, oh, that's not what I thought, but it's good and we should keep doing it. I was like, all right, I feel totally comfortable with this. With Deathland Drifters, I'm finding I started with the Peglin ideology and like that just did not work, right? And as soon as it bounced off, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean it doesn't work? And then I got to like take a step back and be like, well, it's not because it's bad. It's because this was made for Peglin and I shouldn't have done that, right? So being able to like overcome my own pride in a way, I guess, and like refocus my perspective on learning stuff, that'll greatly extend the length of how long a track takes, right? I guess to like succinctly answer it, it could be as short as 2 hours for like something I finish. It takes like, but the song is 1 minute and 15 seconds and it's just a loop that goes on. Or if I want to make like a full 4 minute, like super dramatic storytelling track, it could take me upwards of like 50, 60 hours. I don't know. It also really just depends on like how you feel, right? It's an art, it's emotion based. Like if I don't feel like I have good ideas right now, like nothing I'm making is cool. I don't have a handbook that I can just pull out and be like, all right, let me hit that chord progression. Let me do this. Like this will make it work. I don't have that. I don't know if other people do, but I don't.
I really appreciate you mentioning that because as I mentioned earlier that, my day job, I'm a pharmacist. So that's a non-art based job. And most of my friends and family don't have jobs in the arts, whether it's music, film, writing, whatever. And they had a hard time understanding the process when I finally was stable, financially stable and secure enough to work on my artistic passions. And I started writing novels. And, I would be asked that question of like, goodness, I mean, I guess it depends. Like my first novel versus my second novel, the lessons that I've learned and not learned. And I'm like, sometimes I can sit down and bang out 10,000 words in an hour or two, where other times I'm lucky I can get 2,000 words in a couple hours. Because it's just like you said, it's not like an Excel spreadsheet. You just follow a formula and you just go do the job. It's different. So
I think another large part of that specific experience pertains to like my ADHD and stuff like that, where even though like an art form is generally on and off, like you'll be able to put stuff into it sometimes and not other times. Even more so, like the dopamine regulation in my head is not what it is for normally for other people, I should say. And I think that contributes a lot to like if I'm just not hitting anything that I like, right? If I'm experimenting with new instruments or synths and I just hit a whole bunch that just don't feel right, it's really demotivating. But when I end up like, oh, I got this absolutely sick drum line going, that's enough dopamine for me to continue on to the next piece. And if I just happen to hit a whole bunch of scores in a row, I could finish an entire song for a soundtrack, have it mixed, prepared, and like ready for ship within the evening, which has happened before. It doesn't happen very often, but like if everything lines up, I can produce stuff crazy fast. And then there's other times where an entire week will go by and I have nothing. So,
makes sense. I appreciate you explaining that to me.
Yeah, I think it's a fair thing to talk about. And while on one hand, it could be like, what if I hire this guy and he just doesn't get anything for like weeks and weeks on end? I get that. But also, what if you hire me and it's just all there within 2 days? When it comes to art, I don't know, you kind of roll the dice a little bit as to whether it's like fully like, realized at the end of the day. And if you can account for that within like what time frames you set both for yourself or for what project you're working on, like I don't know, I think that's best practice. Just make sure that like the people who are doing the creative stuff on your team have the time to make mistakes and figure out what does and doesn't work. Because if you don't allot that time, all of a sudden you're stuck with something that you didn't get to test if it works or not. What happens if you throw the music into the game and it does not feel appropriate at all, or you find some kind of like fatal flaw? Oops, you ship the game, it's over. I don't know. Like, yeah, just give yourself and your team time to think about it, come up with the best thing you can.
I like that. I like that philosophy. Thank you. So back to personal, and maybe you've mentioned it in your examples or past inspirations, but on a personal level, what video game soundtracks is or are your favorite, whether it's just for personal recreational amusement or sources of inspiration, like anything? I don't know if you mentioned, like, was it Donkey Kong Country or,
I'm just looking at my like wall of nerd shit up there. I think, Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3, even though 3 was composed primarily by, I believe it was Evelyn Fisher, rather than David Wise. All 3 of those are really important to me. Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3 with Josh Mansell or Mansell. I've only ever read the name. But those were like integral at the very beginning of my life. And then moving to like GameCube era, there's like Super Monkey Ball 2 was my first encounter with like basically the entirety of Sega Sound Team, which is funny because I played that, didn't play Sega games for like a decade. Then I picked up Yakuza 0 and I was like, damn, this is really good. And like, I'm almost getting like a Monkey Ball vibe. And then I look over at like the credits on it and it says the same names on both of them. And I'm like, no way, that's the same guys. It's the same people. So like the entirety of Sega Sound Team has been super influential within Monkey Ball and Yakuza. And then like, I feel like I could be like, yeah, Nintendo. It was Nintendo. I'm a Nintendo guy. But like everybody's already said that, right? And
that's okay. Nintendo makes great music.
They do, but like there's a lot of indie people right now that are doing some absolutely astonishing work that I feel like have completely changed the way that I write my music right now. Right? I have a lot of memories and stuff that influenced how I started, but my style has changed a lot and I think improved a lot within the last year and a half, 2 years. And I would chalk that up exclusively to just like everybody else making indie games that are just absolute 10 out of 10s, right? Tony Grayson, Anton Blast. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how that was even possible. Like, top tier, 10 out of 10, consistent all the way through. And I don't know how that's possible because the last time someone did that was Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I've never seen someone hit that many highs in a soundtrack that frequently. And Tony he does it. I don't know. Grapple Dog was like a couple people on the soundtrack. I believe it was one person on the first one, 3 on the next one. And they use aliases that there's Jazz Mickle, and I don't remember the other 2 because they're complex, right? They're like Twitter handles. So I can't remember the names, but like there's a certain like level of funk to that I have heard in absolutely no other soundtrack. And I have never wanted to like move my body more than when listening to Grapple Dog. So dissecting those and kind of like learning from them specifically for like any kind of groove based thing, right? That's been huge. Listening to the stuff from like the modern Doom games, Doom 2016 and Eternal, and especially Eternal's DLC as well. Picking like new techniques up from people like Mick Gordon or Andrew Hulshult or David Levy. They've all contributed a lot to my modern sound, despite none of my songs being metal in any semblance. It's a lot of like the technical stuff where they break it down on their YouTube channels or they do little deep dives. And I get to see all of that. I can understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then start to implement those ideas of like layering stuff or processing things in different ways. And I guess the last one would just be like Foul Damage, mostly because that's the first project I've ever worked on where I took somebody else's music and then made adjustments or like wrote pieces based on it. So I've never had somebody else come up with the main motif of a game and then ask me to write music to accompany that in other parts of the soundtrack. And that's completely flipped my perspective on how to write music.
Nice.
I don't even know how else to explain that. It's just a completely different experience when you're given a skeletal structure instead of just, well, I really like Persona. I really like Final Fantasy. Could you do something like that? And like that delivery of, you know, I'm really dogging on Persona fans, right? The music's great. I don't know why it's my favorite group to pick on. But yeah, being given something to already work with. I imagine it's the same for a lot of people who like jump in on established franchises like halfway through their, not halfway, but like wherever they are now, right? If you look at Crash Bandicoot, they have a different composer for almost every era of the games. So now I know how that feels. And it's actually like really cool to work with pre-established norms or melodies or whatever. It's a neat experience.
And it diversifies your portfolio and well, just, I was going to say experience, but you just used that word. Words are hard. But thank you for mentioning indie games, because partially my memory stinks. But, you know, when I get asked questions like, well, what video game music do you like? When I talk to my non-video game people and we talk about music, I'm like, oh, video game soundtracks are great. I blank and I always default to like the top, like the big names, like, oh, I love the Legend of Zelda music. I love the Silent Hill music. You know what I'm saying? And
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've pulled out this. I've done this enough. I've said, hey, check this out, Donkey Kong Country. I've done this enough. You all know this already. I've done the same thing with Crash Bandicoot or with Paper Mario or whatever. But like, how many times do you get the chance to like show someone a $10, $15 little indie game that's going to take them 2 hours to play and just like made a really significant impact on your life? Yeah. And you're just like, here's a Steam copy, go play it. I just gifted it to you. That is so important to do. Right, we've already all had these conversations about AAA games that have influenced us in the past, and like, we just really need to talk about the small stuff, no matter how small it is.
And even I myself am trying to find a way from a music collection standpoint where I can get all my like favorite indie soundtracks together. Like, for example, and I bat hard for it to be on the nominees for the Bossies Best Soundtrack was Farewell North by Kyle Banks. Because he had actual Celtic singers. Like the music was like almost like moving me to tears. That's how beautiful it was. And I'm like, see, I want that soundtrack. I want the Smooshy Come Home soundtrack. I want the gory, cuddly Carnage soundtrack. I'm like, and these Fretless, which I don't think that's out yet, but like I got to demo to PAX East, and it's like a musical RPG. So it's like rock and roll and stuff. I'm like, so I'm like, even I myself, as much as I'm a fan of it, I want to be better and learn how I can access them, but also streamline accessing them and not have them in 12 different places. And then, I don't know, maybe if I figure out a method, I'd like to share it, because you're right. Quality-wise, it can be just the same, if not better, as our AAA counterparts, you know?
Yeah, I also think like when you want to recommend an experience to someone, it's a lot easier to be like, here's a copy of a $3 game I found on Steam that I personally really like, instead of like, hey, you got to go find some way to get this game that's been out of production for 15 years because it means something to me. And it's, you know, there's nothing wrong with going to play old games, but it also, I think, you really got to highlight a lot of the talent that exists right now that's been pumping up stuff right now. You know, like there's a lot of people out there that need our support because they want to keep making games for us, and we definitely still want to keep playing their games. We keep saying it, but how are we going to back that up? Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Oh, I feel all energized and ready to go to my Steam Deck and just download.
That's been huge. Owning a Steam Deck, like the whole PC ecosystem being able to be taken with you now has been incredible. It's been massive for me to just try new games, clear out a backlog of stuff I've already bought. Like, and I feel like I only know to talk about and gush about Grapple Dog in front of you today because I had it specifically for my Steam Deck with an LCD shader that made it look like a Game Boy game. I was like, that's an experience that I want.
Awesome.
That's cool. What? Let me try that. And all of a sudden I have a new favorite game, or one of my favorites, but like, that's only because I had the Steam Deck. Had I been sitting here at my desk, pull out a controller off the side of the thing, I wouldn't have sat here like playing Grapple Dog like this. This is uncomfortable. I work here. I don't want to sit here and do that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's
No,
a totally
I
different
love
feeling.
my Steam Deck. I mean, sometimes because I'm so used to the Switch, the bulk of the Steam Deck, I initially like, oh, it's just so big and bulky, and I hate it. But I'm like, I don't know. It's also opened up so many more. It's honestly my indie game machine because there's a lot of indies that
Yeah.
they initially come out on Steam. Maybe they'll open up later. But and same with you. My day job is I sit at a computer all day. Well, what if I just want to? I don't know. Just play somewhere else. So
Yeah, couch, bed, plane, toilet, I don't care. Excuse me. It doesn't actually matter where you play the Steam Deck,
exactly,
or any other PC handheld or any other handheld. But like
exactly.
the diversification of where you play games, I also feel like kind of lends an element of like, well, I'd have a different game for sitting down at my desk than I would at my couch, than I would at my bed. Like, I don't know. I played Balatro in bed for like 2 hours. I didn't even play it on a phone. I played it on a Steam Deck. I would never have done that with Grapple Dog. That's just too much for when I'm about to go to sleep. Balatro, it's fine. My TV right there, like I just built a PC exclusively for it to run Monster Hunter in 4K or Yakuza in 4K or any of those
Nice.
controller games where I want to sit down for a while. And
Yep.
here, I have a mouse. So I'm going to play a shooter here. I'm going to play Doom the Dark Ages sitting at this desk. There's just different use cases, right? So
Yep. Amen to that.
that's how it's got to be.
Awesome. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. The time's actually flying by. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, oh goodness, I have to kind of wrap this
Oh
up.
my God. We've been here for 51 minutes?
Yes.
There's no way. That's crazy.
Right? I know. So, as we start winding down, is there, anything else that you might want to mention, or any final closing thoughts? It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Well, I've had a lot of fun hanging out here. It's been really great. I think in terms of stuff to mention, Peglin having an update soon. Foul Damage out now, available. Deathland Drifters, keep an eye out for it. It has a Steam page where you can go wishlisted now, and I believe at some point we're going to have a demo playable for a Steam Next Fest. So keep an eye out for that.
And yes, wish list.
Yeah.
Come on, guys! It's just a click of a button. It helps
It's
the
huge.
devs out.
It's
Yes.
Don't ever let me catch you being like, yeah, I'll wish list it at home, and then you screenshot it or like take a picture of the game at a conference, and then you just walk away. Don't do that. Wish list the game in front of us.
Yeah.
It's huge. I cannot express how big of a deal that was for every game I've worked on, especially Peglin.
Mm.
Support the devs. That didn't cost you a dime to click that button.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of projects a lot of the stuff that you can see with my music in it that are out right now or will be getting updates right now. But like, if you want to catch anything that I'm doing that's not directly tied to a game, it'd be really great if you visit like my Newgrounds page or something. Because while I am working on Bandcamp and Spotify and like other places where you could just drop in and listen to my music, Newgrounds is where all the experimental stuff will go. So if I write a song that doesn't fit for a game and gets scrapped, or if I write a song that just feels right and, is not particularly for any project, you'll find it there. I don't necessarily need people to be following me on there. I just want you to know, like, if you want the weird stuff, if you want the like out of the way stuff, Newgrounds is where you'll find that from me. So keep an eye out for that. There's a lot of fun stuff that gets put there that you don't often see other places.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll touch base with you after. I'll find you one way or the other. Maybe I can get some of those links, and then when this publishes, we can also put it in the show notes. So
Totally.
make it easier. All right. Well, hang tight while I go through the lovely housekeeping. I still have to nail it where it doesn't sound like I'm listing off side effects of a prescription medication, but. If you want to support the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/Boss Rush Network at the tier that's right for you, earning you perks such as early ad-free access to this and other podcasts, exclusive access to spotlight interview access threads, voting rights on Video Game Book Club. I think Mouthwashing won the latest vote. And more. That's patreon.com/Boss Rush Network. As always, your listenership and viewership is always enough for us. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I hate saying that. And leave us a thumbs up or a comment. If you're listening on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Check out our merch. Check out merch at TeePublic. I haven't done this in a while, with over 50 designs to represent your favorite shows. And lastly, you can check out all our content, reviews, articles, and more on bossrush.net. I'm so sorry. I haven't done that in a while, and it's a mouthful. But
Yeah, that was a gauntlet.
So yeah, Gauntlet itself. So Adam, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and obviously, hopefully, we'll be in touch online and
Oh,
whatever, and
absolutely.
hopefully at a upcoming convention.
I'm hoping so. PAX East, possibly. Yeah. Thank
Mhm.
you so much for having me on Boss Rush. This has been phenomenal. I'm having a great time. It's been super great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much out there for those that are watching or listening to this episode of Boss Rush Spotlight Podcast, the interview series for the Boss Rush Network. Remember, you can catch all new episodes on the podcast services or on YouTube, and you just got to subscribe to the channel or the Spotlight Podcast feed. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a good night.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.